Well, big story breaking overnight is that McShane is staying at home. This obviously changes where Tyrone sit within the landscape. It completely transforms Tyrone from being, we were talking about them as also-rans, like maybe the 5th or 6th or 7th best team in the country, to they got belief back now.
Yeah, they do, and so they should. If you think back to the game against Kerry in the All-Ireland semi-final last year, like it didn't look good for Kerry at half-time in that game.
McShane was killing them,
and we weren't functioning well, and that can happen against Tyrone because they're good at getting bodies back, and they're good at playing that health defence, which makes it hard for individuals to really shine. I think Tommy made a big difference when he came on that day, Tommy Walsh. But like, rightly so, they should be saying, no, okay, let's go. Kyle Coney's playing good football for them. He's a kind of plus outside there. And look, McShane, you just put him straight back in at 14, and all of a sudden you've got a great focal point. They're also saying the marker's in this year.
Yeah.
We thought we were going to lose him to Australia. Let's use him for why maybe they looked at getting him down there, because he's so good at getting out in front. And look, we argued about it on Shot Clock last week, but if the rule stays the same, it doesn't have to be up here. It doesn't have to be the skyscraper of a catch, which is what we were kind of hoping it would be for. It's about getting out in front and having good kickers out the field. And they have Coney and McCurry. They have good kickers that can deliver a good ball out there. So they will be rightly delighted and rightly so feel like they're back in the race to be contenders.
Before the news broke that he's staying around, we were like, they're going to have to rush Matty Donnelly back from the hamstring he ripped off the bone. That's going to be their main attacking thrust. They were trying stuff with Ed McGinley, and I was saying, he was like, look, you know, they're trying stuff, but the lads that they're trying it with just aren't Kyle McShane level, and no one can expect him to be, because he was the best full forward in the country last year. So it's a transformative moment for them. That can they get close to Dublin? Like, is there any way that they can, like, realistically feel like now with McShane back in the team, what can they do over the next 4 months to go into the championship season going, look, we've got to crack this year?
I think you use your best guy and figure out what's the best way to use him. And you know, Dublin have good players in the full back line, but I still think McShane on his day gives anybody huge problems. So if they can find a way to get good ball into him, he's an excellent kicker. If he can get 2 or 3 marks a game, it's an automatic 3 points. If he can get a few dangerous balls where he gets him on the bounce and he can go take, he's very good at taking on his man. He's powerful. So you figure out how to get. Look, Donnelly's a big one. You know, you need Donnelly going well. How well he comes back from that injury. Do they try and tailor his role? Do they say, okay, maybe he's lost maybe a bit of his explosiveness? Do you put him to the middle of the field? Like Matty Donnelly would be unbelievable in the middle of the field as a good tracker, good tackler, smart guy, knows where to be, can carry the ball up the pitch. Yeah, he mightn't be able to have that explosiveness where he's going to leave people for dead and kick points, but he can still kick points in the loop. He can still come on late and kick points. He is an inspirational player for them. So how they tweak that balance is important. You know, how they evolve their defensive system and maybe tweak that a bit, because it obviously didn't work against Dublin in 18. And, you know, they had to figure out a more... you know, maybe they have to figure out kind of like what Galway are trying to do at the moment, and what Donegal did really well last year. Donegal went from a really kind of defensive team to all of a sudden this kind of expansive counter-attacking team still, but they definitely kept more people up front. They definitely went away from the complete blanket. So maybe Tyrone, if they tweak that a bit, will Mickey Hart do that? Will he go with something like that he's...
Probably not.
Probably not at this stage, because he'll stick to what he knows.
There was a change last year, but the point when we were talking about it on Friday was that they were reverting back to the old game plan because McShane wasn't there. It was like, oh, look, what can we do now? We've lost our best player. All of a sudden that changes again, and they can have a rethink. This has the potential for that to be transformative. He's that good. Yeah,
he is, and they just have to. They have to really work on it. And look, they haven't had him for the last number of weeks. Obviously, he's been down there, but they've loads of time to work on it a small bit through the league, and then that break from league to championship to try and figure out, okay, how do we get the most out of this guy, and how can this guy be a match winner? Because, you know, last year he was unplayable, and if he's at that level again, and there's no reason to say why he won't, if not even improving, because there's 2 things that can happen. The confidence that he can get from last year will catapult him to another level again.
Yeah.
Or teams now are actually so honed in on him that they're planning against him, and that he actually finds it harder, and that he gets frustrated in games. Inside, full forward is the most frustrating position in the world to play. You have to be so patient, and you see a lot of fellas that can't hack it in their patience-wise. They say, "Oh, I can't do. I got to go out and get on easy ball and get hand passes and play the game."
Yeah, except the point you were making last week feeds in perfectly to this. If he feels that way, he can make a loop run to somewhere near the 40, and they just need to ping it over to him, and he's going to get a score, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to assume that they're working, because he is such a good kicker,
Yeah.
that they're working on runs for him to get 4 or 5 of those a game.
Exactly. And like the whole argument we had as well last week about that it doesn't even have to be forward, it can be just across.
Yeah.
A fella can be a yard outside the 45 and a yard inside the 45, once or 20 yards apart. And I think when a fella's on the 45 and you're looking at him and you're marking him and he's looking up,
You're defending back that way.
yeah, you're kind of more worried about what's in here. You're not really worried, and like teams will be dropping weak side to get bodies back. Like that is a one. We got caught with one. Carlo, I'm sure Pat Critchley had worked on it, but it was very good the way he done it. We forced them down one side. They'd come back out. We'd done everything right. We were pushing back out of the ball. We'd do weak side, half forward, dropping. But they kicked that little crossfield past a fella that was wide open. Do you know what I mean? Because in the old rules, that guy wasn't a danger at all. He was kind of like...
Yeah, you could stay out there all day.
Correct, yeah, exactly. But he was a danger. This guy caught the ball, marked it and kicked a raker of a point from 40 yards. And, you know, it was in that moment I goes, geez, this mark could be something that, you know, look, I said last week it needs to be tweaked. Is there anything going to be done? I think it has. I think they're saying Congress has to do that we can't just say, oh, we're going to change it or we're going to tweak it or we're going to kill it altogether. But yeah, look, it'll be interesting what they do, what the Tyrone team do. But look, what they're going to get, what's guaranteed that they're going to get out of this news is a huge bolt of confidence. And everyone in that squad who was deflated a number of weeks ago saying this guy's going to be down in Adelaide, he's gone. Or maybe all along this was just something for McShane where it was a free holiday for 3 weeks and go down for a bit of a trial and enjoy the sunshine.
And not have to do the hard slog of winter training and you come back.
Exactly, but they will definitely get a lift as a squad.
Well.
Like, just a couple of things there. The Donegal example, I think, is a good one, but they had Declan Bonner brought in 2 years ago, Stephen Rocher brought in last year. There is no real management change in Tyrone. In fact, they've lost their strength and conditioning coach, and I would say that management-wise, they've regressed.
They lost Stephen O'Neill, didn't they?
They've lost Stephen O'Neill, sorry, what am I talking about? So, like, that would suggest even more, if, like, Stephen O'Neill's press to be believed, that they've regressed definitely in that department. And then I just wonder if there is enough change there to actually take them to the next level. I accept that they can get their way into a semi-final, but there's almost a pressure now on Mickey Hart to go and replicate what they did last year and to go one step further. That almost if we didn't have McShane last year and this year and snuck into a semi-final, people would be like, Mickey Hart still got it. Mm-hmm. Whereas now this actually puts the pressure right back on him to go and somehow eke out. I don't know what Tyrone fans expect, but they probably hope for an All-Ireland win at some stage.
They want to get somebody into a final and they want to have a crack off them. And that's literally all you have to do as a Tyrone guy. If you look at that game against Kerry, Jesus, we were worried last year at half-time. Like, I was up in the studio with Peter Canavan with Sky Sports and he was just grinning from cheek to cheek. It was the real kind of, it was the old Tyrone team. Like, we're frustrating them, we're starting to crack them, they're going to fold. And Kerry just said no after half-time and came out and took it back. But there was a key sequence in that game, if you remember, where Tyrone were on the attack, the extra pass was on, it was a bad pass, badly executed, it was intercepted, Stephen O'Brien got it, Gainey, back to O'Brien, goal. Yeah. That key was the difference between putting Tyrone up 4 or 5 or Kerry getting back level or back behind, I think it was back level. So they would have been down 4, now they were level in 30 seconds. And if you go 4 down against a team like Tyrone, it's going to be hard. And they'll be hoping they get a crack off of these teams again. They get back into a semi-final, find a bit of magic and get somebody on a wet day where they try and frustrate them. And McShane is the game of his life and gets 1-7 and Tyrone win the All-Ireland. That is not inconceivable. No. So as a squad, that's what they have to cling to. They can't cling to the fact that they have the Canavans and the Mulligans and the Stephen O'Neills. And we get up there, we'll be defensive. We've got the three probably best forwards in the game. We get up to them. That's Dublin and Kerry now with them forwards. But Tyrone have won not being the best team before.
Yeah. I mean, no, they haven't. They were definitely the best team of that decade.
In 08. 08, hold on.
What are you talking about?
Stop.
Best team of the decade. She even admitted it when you went where I see. Come here, they've added Kevin Madden and Johnny Davis to the backroom team. Johnny Davis is the strength and conditioning. Kevin Madden is the ex-Antrim footballer who was a heavy scoring forward in his time, I think. So I think there will be fresh voices there. That's that point. Let's move on. You want to talk about the Seamus Moynihan comments saying that there should be pay for that Australian clubs should compensate somewhere in the GAA. So we were trying to work this out exactly. What part of the GAA we get the compensation? Would it be the club? And if it is direct to the club, might the club blow it on an outside manager, or should it go to a coach who is, part funded by the provincial body? Like, is there some way?
Club facilities, maybe?
Maybe automatic. Like
the team could give them something to do something in the club.
Yeah, so these floodlights or these
or the artificial pitch. Training area.
If only you know anybody who might be able to supply them at one.
I'll sort it out. But yeah, no, like that's the only, like, going back into, you're right, you don't want it going back into being misspent on whatever. But facilities for GAA clubs, I'm thinking about Mark O'Connor going out with Dingle or Ty Kennelly going with Listowel. They could have done with a bolt of cash to go back in. It goes back into the kids. It goes back into whatever they can do to improve the club, to entice more kids down to play, whether that be floodlights or whatever. But it's about the guys that have spent the generations getting Mark O'Connor to a point that they're doing that almost in a way for Dingle. They're doing it for the kid, but they're doing it for Dingle. Hopefully he'll win a county championship with Dingle when he's older. Hopefully he'll go on and win All Irelands with Kerry. And then that's just snatched by some crowd over in Australia that come with the bucks and take him. So on a free transfer, which is what it is really.
Yeah.
So maybe something that goes back in where they can feel not like so hard done by. Like Dingle are trying to win a county championship. They're a really good team. They've been knocking on the doors. And if they have Mark O'Connor, they probably have a championship within the last 2 or 3 years. Mark O'Connor is a possible Kerry captain. Paul Gainey could get the captain Kerry. There's a lot of ramifications for them losing Mark O'Connor. And Mark knows that. Mark, I'm sure Mark comes back every winter and is kind of sitting there watching county championship games. Like I used to feel watching basketball games when Stacks were playing or when Kerry were playing or when I couldn't. That thing about being your heartstrings being torn, that you can't help your boys. Mark O'Connor grew up with these lads, won Hogan Cups, won minors with Kerry, and now he used to go around with a water bottle on the sideline and watch them lose county semi-finals or county finals. See fellas absolutely heartbroken in the dressing room. If Dingle were able to keep producing these young players and put it back into facilities, I don't think there's any problem with it. I said that, I don't know that I tweeted or something a few months ago, but I said the same, that there should be something that makes it not as easy for these Aussies just to say, we'll take Ger Gilroy and we'll try him for 2 years, he doesn't work it, he get injured, go back. There has to be real thought into, can this guy be the next Mark O'Connor? Because there's a lot of guys going down there, and there still is, like, I'd love to know the percentage of fellas that are making it, the Zach Tooheys, the Mark O'Connors, the Ty Kennellys, yeah, there's still a lot of them out there that Begley had a great career with the Lions. There's a lot of them out there that do well, but how many are we not really hearing about that go out and just come back within that year? There's a lot of that too.
Most of them, definitely most of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that all makes a whole heap of sense. Ty Kennelly was on, was it before Christmas, just after Christmas, and he said that he had done a deal with the CEO of the AFL that there would be compensation, but that the GAA at the time had turned it down because you can't put a value on the player if the player is amateur. It would have been in breach of their amateur status. Maybe it's time to revisit that. Exactly, and that this isn't payment for the player, that it is recognition of the development of something.
The hours spent putting in to get the player to the level where they're at, that they're good enough to go down to Australia and pick up a new game and go play.
I understood why the GAA were doing that, because it suddenly opens up, the GPA come in, the provincial council comes in, the county board comes in and says, but that player got good at development squads when we invested in strength and conditioning and nutrition and facilities, and the club is like, well, how much do we get? So like the
club nurtured the love though and the talent for that guy to get there. If that guy wasn't been looking after since he's 5 years old, below on Saturday mornings getting his Coke and potatoes and falling in love with the sport and the game, he never gets to the development squads. It is the club that gets you there. It's the club that always is the root of everything. So if a guy gets taken, I can't see why some sponsorship deal can't be done, that the Adelaide Crows can't be on the front of Dingle's jersey. I don't give a shit, but if they got 50k to put back into getting floodlights in their training pitch, they'd be delighted.
Yeah, no, you're dead right. Okay, so let's talk about some of the games this weekend. Dublin against Monaghan is on Saturday night. We'll talk as well about Armagh Kildare in a couple of minutes' time. The games in Division 2 are pretty interesting. Dublin against Monaghan on Saturday night. Dublin have started the league quite well, despite the fact that it's so first game out, everybody recognised the team. Second game out, was like, significant changes here. They're rolling at the moment.
They're rolling. They're unearthing new diamonds all the time. I thought McHugh was very good. It's amazing because it's these guys are coming in, these younger guys are coming into this team, and they're just surrounded by class. And you know, if these young lads were coming into teams that, you know, didn't have that, they mightn't be excelling like they are, but they're just coming in with so much confidence. The other guys are causing so much problems with their power runs. These guys are getting on the back of it. They're getting confidence on the back of seeing that around them. They're able to go forward and take their own chances. And yeah, look, they're in an absolutely unbelievable place. And you know, Monaghan have beaten them the last 3 years in a row. The one above in Clonus last year was a good game, was a close game. Stephen O'Hanlon, the basketball player, came on and swung the game dramatically in Monaghan's favour. And Monaghan had a great win against Tyrone last week, but I just think the weekend will be a step too far. And I think Dublin are looking at, I'd say this group are looking at maybe getting to another league final and half hoping Kerry get through and having another crack off them again. I think this Dublin team want to get a hold of Kerry and try and give them one of those beatings again to remind them that they're that much better. They haven't been able to do that the last number of years, and I think it's bugging them a bit, and they'll want that, and you know, I'm sure Kerry want another crack as well.
Just on the Diamonds coming through, so I was just looking at TJ Reid there. Remember, came off the bench in that game against Waterford and scored 5 points in his first 5 possessions, and the previous year he'd been on the bench for the All-Ireland final against Limerick, where it was the September of the year that Ballyhale had won a club final where he'd scored 2-2 in the club final. So that's the level of player that you had to be to get into that greatest Kilkenny team that was the greatest hurling team of all time. Imagine how good you need to be impressing and training at the moment for the Dubs. And so if there is somebody who's getting a chance, they are going to be very good.
Yeah.
They're earning it.
What if this is a year where Dublin do a 2018 on it and
Blitz
close by everybody again? Like, what if they do get Kerry in a league final and then hammer them in a league final? Doesn't exactly leave you. It doesn't whet the appetite that much for the summer. It does, like a.
Well, let's get into Kerry's defence then, because that's the one thing that would their forwards will hold. If it's a shootout, their forwards are going to be into it, right? And they're going to be able to bear comparison over 80 minutes or however long that final is. But is the defence good enough? Is the Kerry defence good enough?
I think when you peel back a layer of Kerry, and it's not just the defence. They're not able to go toe-to-toe with Dublin. You have to say that they need to pray for fitness in so many departments. And now, when it comes to the forwards, that's just because they've got generational talents, and every team who has generational talents can't do that. In midfield, it's fairly obvious. When David Moore's not there, they're not as good in midfield. And I would say that Shane Ryan needs to stay fit as a goalkeeper. So you get to the 6 forwards. They're missing Tyke Morley and Tom O'Sullivan last week, and they were in big trouble. It's as simple as that. Yeah, they're in my opinion, they're 2 best man markers. So, like, it's a double whammy. You have Gavin Crowley coming back from the half-back line to mark Shane Walsh, which is taking away what he can do going forward, which I think he's brilliant going forward, and he's just not as good an inside marker as O'Sullivan and Morley are. That if they get injuries to those 2 lads or in the backs department, I think they're in trouble. But do they need to come up with something, Kieran, as a fail-safe? That like, when they did bring Paul Murphy back as a sweeper last year, it didn't always work. I don't think it was as bad as some people thought against Tyrone last year, for example. I thought that their MO was to stop goals, and they effectively did that. They let McShane have his points. That I just wonder, did last week send alarm bells ringing that, right, if O'Sullivan and Morley are injured, we're not going to be able to handle these calibre of forwards?
It's a good point. Look, Kerry can't afford to lose those guys. No. You know, I think if you did have 2 of those guys out coming the main business time of the year, you'd be in trouble. Maybe you'd be forced into looking at a more kind of team defence approach. I think they really went man-to-man last year, and I think it worked in a lot of aspects, and I think there's a huge amount to take out of it, and Peter Keane did a great job bringing in that real man-to-man stuff. Fellas were going out after men, but it also caught them a few times, even with the goals in the final. Con Callaghan did dummy runs, and Tom Sullivan was drilled to mark him and went out after him, and, you know, guys were coming through the middle. So I think there might have to be a look at, you know, having the absolute desire to be a man marker, and that's what Kerry did really well last year, and it served us, and it nearly stopped the 5 in a row. Don't forget that. But just to cover, as Owen's point made, if you lose one of those guys through injury and you can't do that, and say it happens in a semi-final, you lose one of these guys to injury, or you lose them in the Super 8s. If you lose a guy in the Super 8s now to a hamstring tear, he's going to miss the rest of the championship, possibly. So you have to maybe have some kind of other format looked at that is, you know, that it's a bit more team orientated. Maybe it's a bit more defensive. Maybe you play. Of course, you can play in the counter attack with the likes of Clifford's, Stephen O'Brien and Paul Ganey as your 3 inside forwards, and just go with that and play them in a straight line. down the middle of the field so they can break out either side and get everybody else back and play a defensive type of game. Because, as Owen rightly says, if you lose 2 or 3 of them, no, Crowley will be back. And he, where he is when he comes back, but I know him and I know how dedicated he is, and he will have done everything right to get back to that peak, and he'll be a huge addition to that back line. If you could throw him in and back on top of the 6 backs that we had there last year, there's fierce competition for places. Somebody's going to be pissed off losing out, and they get better.
Am I wrong that he is actually a prototype sweeper if you need him?
I was just thinking that when you said it. Definitely he has the brain and the athleticism to kind of burst forward. And
physicality to make sure that no one's going to come running.
He's a dog as well, though. He and I mean that in the best sense of it. He's a dog, and you want your dog in somebody's face, and Crowley is as good as doing that as anybody.
Can I? So coming off the back of the NFL season, right? The best defenses do a little bit of everything. And they mix it up in the middle of a game, and they mix it up before the play happens. So, couldn't he be a sweeper for a part of a game and also a dog for a part of a game? And you just have, there's just a little bit of communication where it's okay, at the moment, I am the sweeper. I'm the mic. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to do this.
The start of the game against Dublin, for example, stop that early onslaught that tends to happen.
Or maybe the start of the game, you put him on Kieran Kilkenny, and he's absolutely in Kieran Kilkenny's face for the first 25 minutes. And at that point, you go, okay, right, this bit, we've got him now. We know exactly what he's going to do. We can put somebody else on him. I'm going to go back and just sweep for 15 minutes. Or the start for the throw-in, for example. To just be...
It's a great point you're making, Jern. That's the way the game is going, and that's what you're going to have. You're going to have teams that'll be in the middle of a game or from a kick-out, there'll be a call and they'll go back into a defensive zone shape, and they'll actually know that when they're in this zone, the idea is that we're going to, if you go out in the first 10 minutes and you're man-to-man and everybody's singled out and you're up, you're really at fellas, and then from a kick-out, the runner comes in and makes a call and your team goes into defensive structure, and you're in that defensive structure knowing that when you get your turnover, because they'll come down, it happens in basketball, you come down the court in basketball and you're used to man-to-man and you're running all your sets, then you come down, the team throws a 1-3-1 at you. For a few minutes you kind of don't know what to do, you're passing the ball around, what are they doing, where are they, why am I free, where's my man gone, why is he gone back there now? And then you switch it back up again 10 minutes later, he's back out hopping off you again. That's keeping it forward, thinking it's keeping the team on edge, it's keeping the team not knowing all the time what they're facing. And I think it's certainly something teams could look at, and it's probably the next level, and it's probably, I don't know how far it is away where teams get to that level where they're actually switching defences in game to keep the opposition on their toes and not let them set on one way they're playing. So if they're playing against a mass zone, that they keep the ball out wide and they force you to come out. But if you're switching it up, I think it certainly does give you options. And I think on the Crowley
doing that. Do you think? Are we seeing that?
I would say I don't know if teams have got to that yet. I think there's certainly. I think Dublin are the closest to it. And I think they've got their clear tactical calls. Is one is the fist up that we've talked about. That's the obvious one. But is there little nuances that they have or that they go to at times? Are they just that example that we keep going back to last year about Cluxton coming out and marking?
Yeah.
Have are these things being? Is there calls for these things? Is it just that they've done them so much in training that they know when that scenario arrives that they do it? But if a team is losing a point, are they not in a full pitch press?
Yeah.
Is everybody not up inside the 45 on a kick out kind of going?
That's all offensive. The defensive conversations that we've all been having is get bodies back, and your sweepers need to be active and they need to make themselves busy. But is that as complicated as defending has got?
I would think so. I think Dublin have very started this pushing teams down the sideline down. I think that's something that's going to catch on, using the sideline like you would in basketball as your friend. I would say Mark Ingle might have had a lot to do with that. Trapping from behind, sending a fella down the line and the second guy coming from behind. So when you get him going down the line, he starts getting confident, he's looking up, and then there's nothing on, he turns around, and when he turns around, that second guy is coming from behind on the trap. So they are very dynamic defensively, I would say, Dublin, and also that's backed up with having unbelievable backs. So it's kind of, it's the best of both worlds.
Okay, we didn't talk about the games in Division 2. The other games this weekend, so Dublin versus Monaghan Saturday night. Donegal against Galway, we talked about in Shot Clock a little bit earlier on. Meath against Mayo. Meath are struggling a bit at the minute. They need to get a win there. Yeah,
it's on in Meath, so that'll be massive to get a win. There's a few big games. Yeah, there's other games. The big games in Division 2 are very interesting as well.
Tyrone against Kerry, obviously. That's going to be interesting. What's going to happen? Why didn't we call that one? There was a good third game this week. You didn't want to.
Igalo, we have to wait. Wait 4 months for this point to figure out.
It's all about the slow burn on the shot clock. I guess we didn't think that it would be is Colin McShane going to play this weekend?
Yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Yeah.
That of course he is.
Well, he's not going to be on the touchline or the terrace like he was last time.
Just straight in, yeah. That changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.